Welcome back, beautiful people. In Benin Republic today, according to legitimate target, Benin Republic confirms calling on Burkina Faso to help defend against terrorist threats despite the French troops occupying its territory. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a news that is not really surprising to us. The Benin Republic is now calling on the Burkinabe armed forces to help apply their capabilities, because the question is, does the Burkinabe armed forces have the capability to help Benin Republic to defend the territory, most especially along the northern borders of Benin Republic? Maybe the ones that shares it with Burkina Faso. Definitely, if you think about the troop number in Benin Republic, it might not be compared to what the Burkinabes have. Does the Burkinabe have the manpower to man every part of his territory? Maybe not. But based on what we have now, based on their defense budget, based on the number of VDP recruitment that they continue to do, I think they have the capabilities to. We've seen the Burkinabe VDPs actually exchanging knowledge with some of the Ivorian border guards when it comes to the drone first-person view capabilities. We've seen the video. And again, we've seen the collaboration between the Burkinabe armed forces along the Deni and the Pama sector. The Togolese collaborating with the Burkinabes to defend their territory. Now, again, Benin is now extending out their welcoming hand, like, look, we will be welcoming your expertise in defending our territory. It only collaborates with some of the information that we've actually given from credible sources before, that according to local sources and according to some of the troops, that when the elements are approaching the territorial land of Benin Republic, that the troops were going to run 30 kilometers into their territory. I couldn't imagine it, that as a military personnel, enemy tactical elements are approaching and you're running 30 kilometers. But I can't really blame those people, because according to the information we're even getting from local sources, they said most of the time the Beninese armed forces don't even train with live fire. There's some of them train with wood, some of them train with with no bullets, some of them train even without their armors in there. So these are the big things to put into consideration. And a lot of people have been asking the question, you got French troops in your territory, why not the French troop defending your territory? Well, maybe the French troop have other mission in Benin Republic. Maybe it is not to protect the Beninese people. After all, the French troops are not Beninese origin. They are not of Beninese origin. So it is the responsibility of the Beninese military to defend every Beninese out there. So I know the people in the Beninese capital might not be able to relate with this information. They might not be able to relate with the realities that the people at the border are facing, but again, this is a very good development. I think everyone can pick up their relationship from anywhere. I think maybe, who knows, it will now be down to the Burkinabe authorities to choose to accept or not. And a lot of people have been asking, why is it that Patrice Talon, the president of Benin Republic, has been posturing about, trying to inflate or, magnify the capabilities they have? Well, I do think leaders might not agree, but as citizens, we must agree. As I speak in this moment, I equally love the Beninese people, and I speak for the interest of the Beninese people. The Beninese people are not the enemies of anybody. So leaderships too might not agree. It's just down to individual interests, which might collide sometimes, and emotions can be up and down all over the place. But at the end of the day, I think this is a welcome development, because I do believe at this point in time that the Burkinabes, they have the capabilities to do this. And apart from having the capabilities to do this, I think it's going to be to an extent a collaborative partnership to kind of defend the territorial sovereignty. When it comes to the northern part of Benin, is going to be a collaboration with the Burkinabe armed forces. Probably maybe with some rapid intervention brigade coming into the frame. But at the end of the day, this is a welcome development. Could this be Benin trying to, ally itself or ally herself with the forces of freedom, the forces of liberation? Ladies and gentlemen, you can drop your opinion on what you think about that. Now, we have a situation in the Sikasso region along the Kunieba sector. What happened in this region was a Malian convoy was actually escorting some logistic supplies. And what happened was that the elements of the Jamaat Muslima sect, they actually tried to ambush this convoy, majorly to take away what it was trying to supply to some of the locals in the Sikasso region. So what we discovered was that there was a close combat exchange because the ambush element actually established contact from all over the place, but the Malian infantries were able to resist the attack. And what happened thereafter was that after some exchange of fierce combat in fire in a very, very close range, the enemy started taking casualties and they backed up. At a point when they were backing up after some over 30 to 45 minutes of exchange, the airborne components, the airborne vectors of the Malian armed forces were already in place to give them some kind of area support to negotiate superiority. And at this point, when the area vectors came in, because of the proximity of the contact line, the airborne component had to do some sort of surveillance job just to look at what was going on, and if necessarily, if there's some kind of maybe reinforcement coming along from the inside of the enemies, the air vectors were going to give support. But at the end of the day, the Malian infantries were able to overpower the first drove of enemies that came. And after the ones that escaped, according to information we have, the Malian airborne vectors actually monitored them and tracked them down to their location where they retreated to, and they launched the decapitation strike, taking out everything within that region. Now, a lot of people argue that there might be some casualties that have been, that might have been incurred on the people that are there, but according to the information we have, these are places that have been deserted. The citizens have actually fled. They are internally displaced. So these were the regions they ran into, and unluckily for them, the Malian armed forces actually, they leveled the whole place. So goodbye to the enemy forces, and the Malian armed forces just dropped the information on their official farmer platform, and it just continues to show the capabilities of the Malian armed forces, how the infantries, how they have a close coordination with the airborne component to kind of make sure that every battle they fight, it's going to be from strategically a very, very superior point. So ladies and gentlemen, that is a very good development. Now we have a very, very good situation in Ghana, where the Ghanaian judicial system has now adopted a new style. Is this style something we've not seen before? Actually, we've seen this before. We've seen it from the Burkina Faso. We've seen it. I don't know if this also applies to Niger. I don't know if it applies to Mali, but I've definitely seen this in Burkina Faso, where the justice, the lawyers, now they are going to be on their native wares. Ghana has always been one of the biggest crusaders of Pan-Africanism, and I'm really, really loving this. It's not a situation where we continue to project an identity that is not our home. At the end of the day, as elite as Ghana is, as intelligent as the Ghanaians are, as productive as they are, as mentally correct as they can be, adopting this style is actually a very, very great thing, one which the younger generation can emulate. Ghana has always been, they've always been the heartbeat of morality in Africa, and I'm really, really proud of Ghana for that. This is just another step in the board that, Ghana is sneakily, stylistically stamping whatever the AES has done, like, okay, we subscribe to that because that is actually cool too. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about this development from the Ghanaian judicial system, which is actually good? I think a lot of other countries might start, inculcating this idea and try to collaborate into their system, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the judicial system could not still be corrupt in some places, but at the end of the day, Ghana has just taken a very, very big step. And, to me, I mean, that is another step into sovereignty. Sovereignty can never be too much, in my own opinion. And what Ghana just did right there is actually emulating the right thing. So, from Niger Republic, General Abdurrahman Chiani actually visited another town after he left Tilaberi, and he actually defined what democracy, based on his own terms. He defined it to the citizens, and he said democracy to them means survival, democracy means to them dignity, and democracy means to them sovereignty. And when you look at those three things, right, these were things that the Nigerian people never had. Can you imagine being the fourth largest uranium reserve in the world, but at the end of the day, you don't have electricity? Not at all. Nigeria was supplying Niger Republic electricity, and at the time when the tension escalated in the diplomatic relationship, Nigeria had to cut the electricity from Niger. Thanks for, the rescue mission that came from Morocco and all of the rest. So, what I do think is, I think at the end of the day, sovereignty will mean a lot to the Nigerian people, and dignity is something they never got treated with, but now we can see that, Niger Republic, the so-called Niger Republic, one of the epicenters of poverty, one of the biggest epicenters of terrorism before, is now becoming a place where, a lot of people are now looking at like, okay, we can actually, invest in this country. They're talking about the nuclear energy. And when I listened to the foreign minister of Niger Republic, when he was speaking to the Russian counterpart, when he was speaking to Vladimir Putin, and he was talking about what the nuclear power plants will actually do to benefit the Nigerian people, I was thinking they were only going to be, a country that have lacked electricity for so long. I was thinking they were going to be talking about the interest of the Nigerians alone, but they were not even interested in the interest of only the Nigerians. They were equally saying that if possible, to supply a lot of other people all over the continent of Africa electricity. Ladies and gentlemen, when I look at the way these people think, man, they are just different, in my own opinion. And looking at the way, President Chiani actually defined democracy, I actually think this is actually a very, very beautiful way of defining democracy. Because if you look at the three key things he said, survivor, dignity and sovereignty, I don't think they ever, tasted any of these on before the General Abdurrahman Chiani took over. If you talk about survivor, how do you expect people that had their cutleries to the point where the iron cutleries got contaminated with radioactive material? How do you expect those kind of people to relate with survival? Are they surviving? Somebody who worked as an engineer in a Orano mine, who borrows loan, who struggles to pay for spaghetti, a pastor for 9 days. They continue to pay gradually. Just a pastor, not a carton. Man, the situation was really, really desperate. And to talk about sovereignty, to talk about dignity, and to talk about survival for these people, I don't think they have had it before. So I think it means a lot to them, and I think they will do everything within their power to defend that right now. But what do you think about it? The French Prime Minister, Sebastien Lecornu, actually resigned less than a month in office. Ladies and gentlemen, according to him, he said, I choose my country over my political party. Ladies and gentlemen, when you look at that statement, in my opinion, I think that statement is actually very, very tricky, in the sense that, and the situation is very, very desperate for France, in my own opinion. You picking up a prime minister, and in less than a month, the prime minister resigned. Oof. I mean, the situation is extremely humiliating because um, for him to resign, that means the situation is extremely desperate. Economically, is desperate. That means he must have seen some things where he feels like, man, it's better I resign, because if I don't resign, I will just get pushed out the way the last prime minister got pushed out. Maybe he's a man with a lot of integrity and is trying to fight for his reputation. We don't know what Emmanuel Macron is going to do at the end of the day to save this desperate situation that the French people are facing. It just continues to show that the economic loopholes of France are just getting more obvious than ever. I do think that a new reality needs to be established in France. We've said this over and over on this platform, that this is not just reforms. The reforms, drastic reforms, need to be made, right? But the people have to understand the new realities. Things have changed. The diplomatic allies of France before, some of them are no longer there again. Like the AES states, economically, it is now more obvious than ever that these people had a very significant role to play. Now, if these people had a significant role to play, I think it should have been a relationship that should have been mutual. It should have been beneficial to both sides. And I think, it may be, to an extent, there could have been a sort of, patch up. There could have been a sort of economic patch up to this devastating condition that the economy of this country is, because how will you argue that the economic situation of the French is not in a devastating state if a prime minister just got in less than a month after the way Francois Bayrou just resigned, and now is coming to power, and the next thing is dropping his resignation letter, which was accepted by Emmanuel Macron. So except a prime minister that just want to go out there, posture for the people, be the poster boy and deceive the people. If not, I don't think they are recovering anytime soon. That's just my, my honest review looking at things. They can even borrow loans, but the question is, where is the raw materials going to come from? What is the reality of France? I think that is what they must now address, to tell the citizens about the new realities. Okay, this is the situation on ground. Another reality check right there. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Starting on October 2nd, Burkina Faso is going to be recruiting 1,000 healthcare personnel in a cycle of recruitment that is going to continue until 2030. According to Burkina Faso, the essence of this recruitment is to address personnel shortage in the system and to improve the access to healthcare for the citizens all around the Burkinabe territory, from Suru to Djibo to Barabule to everywhere. The importance of healthcare personnel cannot be overstated. Captain Ibrahim Traore has really done a lot to improve the healthcare of Burkina Faso. You can't imagine that the entire Burkina Faso did not have an MRI machine. They never had an magnetic resonance imaging machine until Captain Ibrahim Traore came to power. And apart from that, they never had an electron microscope until Captain Ibrahim Traore came to power. The situation was really devastating. A lot of people from the outside that are actually looking from maybe the capitals of Nigeria, maybe you're talking from Port Harcourt, maybe you're watching from Lagos, or you're watching from Abuja. You can't really, or Benin, or some of these modern cities, you can't really reason along with the realities of those people. If a whole country does not have an MRI or an electron microscope, you should know that the situation is seriously desperate. Not to even talk of the roads, not to talk of how devastating, the people that were plundering their relationship, all in the name of, should I say, diplomacy or partnership. it was a very bad relationship so far, and we can see now that they are beginning to gradually, a step at a time, they are improving. Just imagine if there was no war waged against those people. So just imagine how much development, how much infrastructure they would have been able to put up right now. But there is no infrastructure or security, there is no business security, there's no investment security if the security of the nation is not addressed. And that is what Captain Ibrahim Traore has done so far so good in his regime, increasing the defense spending of Burkina Faso to over $1 billion, becoming the second largest defense spender in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, that is actually shocking in my own opinion. For once upon a time, the poorest or the second poorest country in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, the question is, were they poor? Or were their sovereignty being stepped upon? So, ladies and gentlemen, the last information of today, good news. Mali has already resumed flights to Abidjan, and the flight has commenced today. This flight will operate 3 times a week, Wednesday, Friday, and Sundays. A lot of people are saying that these could actually fix the relationship gaps that has been between Cote d'Ivoire and Mali. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about this information? The Mali airline has actually started going, go in the morning, come back in the afternoon. For now, that is the situation. A lot of people are saying, that this might not be a good move, but at the end of the day, a lot of people equally said that this is a win-win for both countries, because economically it's going to benefit the Abidjans, and economically too is going to benefit the Malians. But a lot of people continue to argue that what does the flight, what benefit does it bring to the Malian people? But at the end of the day, I just think we might have conflicting interest, but at the end of the day, the citizens are the ones that are going to benefit from this, not really the citizens that have families in Mali, the citizens of Mali that have families in Burkina Faso. We must not forget at the end of the day that we are still one people of Africa. Everybody might have their, internal conflicts based on whatever interest, but we must still at the end of the day disagree to agree. The leadership might not agree, but let's not forget the unity of Africa lies among us, the citizens. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy 7200 signing out, enough said. But before I go, I want to appreciate everyone for coming back to watch this program. For every of our, community members in diaspora and at home, we really, really appreciate you. We thank you. We love you for your support. A lot of y'all are doing too much for this channel. You've done a lot for this channel. Putting your time out there to really, really get updated at the end of the day, sharing the news, putting the like button that really put the information on the, the important list of the algorithm to send it out to more people that continue to come into the channel every day. I want to appreciate you. And now we're 18,000 subscribers. It's just another step in our journey to reach where we want to reach, becoming an independent platform that will be able to put out, some of the most fantastic information based on frontline realities to our people. Thank you, and God bless you.